Let's continue with Chapter 7, The Light Princess. Partway through Chapter 7, and we just got to the part about the metaphysics. So, there is but one thing left, answered she. Let us consult the College of Metaphysicians. Bravo, cried the king, we will. Now, at the head of this college were two very wise Chinese philosophers, by the name Humdrum and Kopikek. Sounds like coffee cake. For them the king sent, and straightway they came. In a long speech he communicated to them that they knew very well already, and who did not, namely the peculiar condition of his daughter in relation to the globe on which she dwelt, and requested them to consult together as what might be the cause and probable cure of her infirmity. The king laid stress upon the word, but failed to discover his own pun. The queen laughed hard, but Humdrum and Kopikek heard with humility and retired in silence. I don't get the pun. The consultation consisted chiefly in propounding and supporting for the 1000th time each his favorite theories. For the condition of the princess afforded delightful scope for discussion of every question arising from a division of thought, in fact, of all the metaphysics of the Chinese Empire. But it is only justice to say that they did not altogether neglect the discussion of the practical question, what was to be done? Humdrum was a materialist, and Kopikek was a spiritualist. The former was slow and sententious. The latter was quick and flighty. The latter had generally the first word. The former had the last. I reassert my former assertion, began Kopikek, with a plunge. There is not a fault in the princess, body or soul, only they are wrong put together. Listen to me now, Humdrum, and I will tell you in brief what I think. Don't speak. Don't answer me. I won't hear you until I have done. At that decisive moment, when the souls seek their appointed habitations, two eager souls met, struck, rebounded, lost their way, and arrived each at the wrong place. The soul of the princess was one of those, and she went far astray. She does not belong by rights to this world at all, but to some other planet, probably Mercury. Her proclivity to her true sphere destroys all the natural influence which the orb would otherwise possess over a corporeal frame. She cares for nothing here. There is no relation between her and this world. She must therefore be taught by the sternest compulsion to take an interest in the earth and as the earth. She must study every department of its history, the animal history, its vegetable history, its mineral history, its social history, its moral history, its political history, its scientific history, and its literary history, its musical history, its artistical history, and above all, its metaphysical history. She must begin with the Chinese dynasty and end with Japan. But first of all, she must study geology, and especially the history of the extinct races of animals, their nature, their habits, their loves, their hates, their revenges. She must hold it, roared Humdrum. It is certainly my turn now. My rooted and insubvertible conviction is that the causes of the anomalies evident in the princess's condition are strictly and solely physical, but that it is only tantamount to acknowledging that they exist. Hear my opinion. For some cause or other, of no importance to our inquiry, the motion of her heart has been reversed. That remarkable combination of the suction and the force pump works the wrong way. I mean, in the case of the unfortunate princess, it draws where it should force out. It forces out where it should draw in. The offices of the auricles and the ventricles, are subverted. The blood is sent forth by the veins and returns by the arteries. Consequently, it is running in the wrong way through all her corporeal organism, lungs and all. Is it then at all mysterious, seeing that such a case, that on other particular of gravitation as well, she should differ from normal humanity? My proposal for this cure is phlebotomize until she is reduced to the last point of safety. Let it be effected, if necessary, in a warm bath, when she is reduced to a state of perfect asphyxia. Apply a ligature to the left ankle, drawing it tight as the bone will bear. Apply at the same moment another equal tension around the right wrist. By means of the plates constructed for the purpose, place the other foot and the hand under the receivers of two air pumps. Exhaust the receivers, exhibit a pint of French brandy, and await the results. Which would presently arrive in the form of grim death, said Kopikek. If it should, she would yet die in doing our duty, retorted Humdrum. But their majesties had too much tenderness for their volatile offspring to subject her to either of its schemes of the equally unscrupulous philosophers. Indeed, the most complete knowledge of the laws of nature would have been unserviceable in her case, for it was impossible to classify her. She was a fifth imponderable body, sharing all the other properties of the ponderable. Chapter 8. Try a drop of water. Perhaps the best thing for the princess would have been to fall in love. But how a princess who had no gravity could fall into anything is a difficulty. Perhaps the difficulty. As for her own feelings on the subject, she did not even know that there would be such a beehive of honey and stings to be fallen into. That's a good line. I'm going to read that again. As for her own feeling on the subject, love, she did not even know that there was such a beehive of honey and stings to be fallen into. I love you. This is fantastic. But now I come to mention another curious fact about her. The palace was built on the shores of the loveliest lake in the world, and the princess loved this lake more than a father or mother. The root of this preference, no doubt, although the princess did not recognize it as such, was that the moment she got into it, she recovered the natural right of which she had been so wickedly deprived, namely, gravity. Whether this was owing to the fact that water had been employed as means of conveying the injury, I do not know, but it's certain that she could swim and dive like a duck that her old nurse said she was. The manner in which this alleviation of her misfortune was discovered was as follows. One summer evening during a carnival of the country, she had been taken upon the lake by the king and queen in the royal barge. They were accompanied by many of the couriers in a fleet of little boats. In the middle of the lake, she wanted to get into the Lord Chancellor's barge, where his daughter, who was a great favourite with her, was in it with her father. Now the old king rarely consented to make light of his misfortune, yet happening on the occasion to be in a particularly good humour. As the barges approached each other, he caught up the princess to throw her onto the chancellor's barge. He lost his balance, however, dropping her into the bottom of the barge, lost his hold of his daughter, not, however, before imparting to her the downward tendency of his own person, though in a somewhat different direction, for as the king fell into the boat, she fell into the water. With a burst of delighted laughter, she disappeared into the lake. A cry of horror ascended from the boats. They had never seen the princess go down before. Half the men were underwater in a moment. But they had all one after another come to the surface again for breath. With tinkle, tinkle, babble, and gush, came the princess' laugh over the water from far away. There she was, swimming like a swan. Nor would she come for the king or queen, chancellor or daughter. She was perfectly obstinate. But at the same time she seemed more sedate than usual. Perhaps it was a great pleasure spoils laughing. At all events, after this, the passion of her life was to get in the water. And she was always the better behaved and more beautiful the more she had of it. Summer and winter it was quite the same, only she could not stay so long in the water when she had to break the ice to let her in. Any day, from morning till evening in the summer, she might be described as a streak of white in the blue water, lying as still as the shadow of a cloud or shooting along like a dolphin, disappearing and coming up again far off, just where one did not expect her. She would have been in the lake of night, too, if she could have had her way, for the balcony of her window overhung in a deep pool of it, and though a shallow, reedy passage, she could have swum out onto the wide, wet water, and no one would have been any the wiser. And there's a picture, and she's in the lake with some swans. I'm just going to pull this up here. Lake on the swans, lake on the swans. Any the wiser. Indeed, when she happened to wake in the moonlight, she could hardly resist the temptation. But there was a sad difficulty of getting into it. She had a great dread of the air, as some children have of the water, for the slightest gust of wind would blow her away, and a gust might arise in the stillest moment. And if she gave herself a push towards the water and just failed of reaching it, her situation would be dreadfully awkward, irrespective of the wind, for at best she would have to remain suspended in her nightgown till she was seen and angled for by some from the window. Oh, if I had my gravity, thought she, contemplating the water, I would flash out of this balcony like a long white seabird headlong into the darling wetness. Hi-ho! This was the only consideration that made her wish to be like other people. Another reason for her being fond of water was that in alone she enjoyed any freedom. Okay. For she could not walk out without a cortege, consisting in part of a troop of light horse, for fear of the liberties of which the wind might take her, and the king grew more apprehensive with increasing years, till at last he would not allow her to walk abroad at all without some